Right now we're going to finish These Are My People by Mildred T. Howard, and I'm going to read the epilogue out loud to you. This is on page 135. You can either follow along in your own book or you can just watch the video and read along with me. At Sian, Gladys and her children found the gates of the great city closed. "Sian can hold no more," a man called to the refugees. "Perhaps in Fufeng you can find help." Gladys stared at him, too tired and feverish to move. Then the tide of people flowed back from the gate, sweeping some of the children along with them. Taking a deep breath, Gladys blew her whistle and herded her charges back to the station. Her charges means the children, the people she is in charge of. At Fufeng, she found refugee centers and private homes where people agreed to take the children. When the children were settled, Gladys went from one group of refugees to another, telling them about the Christ who died for them. As she walked, the hot sun poured down on her throbbing head. Her bones ached with weariness. In the middle of the afternoon, the sky spun around her and she fell into the dust of the street. At the hospital, Gladys was delirious with a temperature of 106 degrees. For weeks, she struggled with exhaustion, malnutrition, which means she had not had enough food or good nutrition. She had bad nutrition, malnutrition, relapsing fever, pneumonia, and typhus. It was months before she was up and about, and years before she fully recovered. To see that she got peace and quiet, the doctors sent her to stay with the Fishers, a missionary couple at Meyssine. When Gladys was well enough, she went back to see her children. Satisfied that they were being cared for properly, she felt free to continue the Lord's work. She went to Sian, where she found a small room off a courtyard. The courtyard was rented by 2 Chinese Christians. They had turned one of the rooms into a small chapel and had begun an independent church. At the church, Gladys taught the refugees who streamed into the city. She told stories, sang hymns, led some of the people to Christ, and fed and clothed those in need. As the refugees told others about the church, more and more people flocked to the tiny courtyard. Although it was over 2 years after Gladys and her children had reached Sian, the war was still dragging on. Then, in 1943, the Americans landed on one of the islands controlled by Japan. When the Japanese heard, they retreated from China, and the Chinese countryside was free from troops. By autumn, Gladys was on the move again. She received an invitation to stay with Dr. and Mrs. Hoyt at their home in Lanchao. Gladys accepted, happy to see the blue skies of northwestern China again. The Hoyts' home at the Borden Memorial Hospital topped a barren slope of the Yellow River and faced the walls of Lanchao. The hospital was a busy compound. People from hundreds of miles around came there for medical attention. Gladys found good fellowship, a good home, and lots of work to do. But when she heard of a small group of Christians in a remote mountain village, she packed her belongings and went to help. When Gladys's work was done there, she went on to Chengdu, where she worked with a Chinese doctor. While in Chengdu, she attended the church of Pastor Christian Chang. When he needed a Bible woman, he asked Gladys if she would accept the position. She agreed and moved into a small room at the back of the church. She cleaned the church, studied, prayed, and taught the women. At last, the war between China and Japan was over, and China enjoyed a few years of peace. Then, rumors began to drift out of the north. The communists were beginning to move out of their mountain stronghold of Yinan, just the other side of Shanxi. The wealthy began to quietly leave the cities, and the consul asked the missionaries to begin packing. Since Gladys had given up her English citizenship and was a naturalized Chinese, her friends worried about her. If she were arrested, there would be no way they could help her. One of her friends contacted the Orphaned Missions Committee, a society set up to aid missionaries cut off from their home countries. He told them about his orphaned missionary and arranged for her to reach England. Gladys arrived in England in the spring of 1949. Her parents overlooked the small Chinese woman waiting patiently on a wooden bench and had Gladys paged over the loudspeaker. When the brown-skinned woman hurried to meet them, they were startled to realize that she was their daughter. So boys and girls, the way Gladys sat on the bench, the way her skin had tanned so brown, the way she did her hair, the clothing she wore, they did not recognize their own daughter. Gladys was happy to see her family again, but she found herself a stranger in London, as had Mrs. Lawson. The overgrown city was too noisy, too fast, too strange for her to take in. Realizing the difficulty Gladys was facing, Mrs. Aylward set to work trying to make Gladys feel at home. She introduced her to friends and acquaintances. Gladys began to get invitations to speak at churches. The storyteller emerged, and Gladys was busy about the Lord's work again, happily telling about Christ and the work in China. When an article about Gladys appeared in a newspaper, a BBC producer decided to interview Gladys. Alan Burgess was expecting to get a short interview for his program, The Undefeated. Instead, he ended up with a half-hour dramatization of Gladys's life. Gladys received more invitations to speak. She was content until news from China began to filter back to London. Tales of secret arrests, interrogations, and accusations of brother against brother sent her to her knees in prayer. Finally, she realized that she could not return to communist China. Instead, she turned her attention to the Chinese of London, helping them in every way she could. The dramatization of her life had been such a success that Alan Burgess was asked to write a book about her life. Gladys agreed to talk to him on the condition that he would come with her to her meetings, as she had no time to spare. He did, and The Small Woman was published in 1957. That year, Gladys decided to go back to nationalist China. She set sail for Hong Kong in April. She was met by old friends and acquaintances and was delighted to see them again. For a while she stayed in Hong Kong, but it was too crowded for her to remain there permanently. She went to Formosa and made the little island of Taiwan her home. Proudly she referred to the island as Taiwan, Free China. Some of her friends and even some of the children she had taken on the long journey over the mountains were in Taiwan. Gladys found that she was not only a mother, but also a grandmother. Children flocked to her always, and soon Gladys was looking for a house to fill with the orphaned children abandoned on her steps and in the street. The baby's home was begun. By 1959, Gladys was again accepting invitations to speak, this time to tell of the baby's home and to seek help for the babies. She spoke in America, then in Canada. In 1963, she was back in London. She took Gordon, a little Chinese toddler, with her. Gladys had taken care of many babies, but Gordon was special. He became her own and went with her everywhere, holding her hand as they walked and sitting quietly on the platform as she talked. Her last visit to England was in 1966. She returned to Taiwan to live with Gordon in a small house in the city. Gordon was a schoolboy now. He and Gladys spent many happy hours paddling about in the cove on the seashore. He still attended her meetings and admonished her not to talk too long. Although she enjoyed speaking tours, Gladys loved the children more. A friend drove her to the baby's home 2 or 3 times a week. Gladys spent some time there visiting and playing with the children. The year of 1970 began like most others, cold and damp. Gladys caught a cold and began to cough. The friend who was staying with her advised her not to attend a night meeting, but Gladys went anyway. When she got home, her cough was worse and she had a fever. The doctor came, told her she had the flu and pleurisy, and gave her some medicine. At the age of 68, Gladys went to be with her Lord. The news of Gladys Aylward's death was broadcast over BBC. Her funeral service was attended by over 1,000 people, and memorial services were held for her in America, Canada, Australia, and England. Her body was not returned to England, but was buried on a hillside facing Yangcheng in mainland China, where her ministry began. Although she herself was in heaven with her Father, her body remained with the people she loved. For as Gladys herself had written years before, "These are my people. God has given them to me, and I will live or die with them for Him and His glory." The end. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed reading the story of Gladys Aylward. She was an amazing woman who, because of the Lord's help, was able to save hundreds of children in a war-torn country. And she brought even more people the good news of Jesus. So I pray that she is an inspiration to you, and I pray that you enjoyed our story. Have a great day.